podcast in the history of the known universe. It's a Thursday. We are at the Phoenix on Westheimer, where I spend a lot of time when I'm not
Well,
doing
you are.
podcasts. Well,
You're there.
yeah, but you're here virtually.
Yeah.
That kind of counts.
I can smell the fish and chips.
They actually have their food is so good here. I was trying to figure out what to eat, and then I realized, I got steak night tonight, so maybe I shouldn't eat. But anyway, happy to have you, brother. AJ Hoffman joins us as always on Thursday. We'll get to all the other stuff later. I just want to jump right in, and you were telling me before you came on about a confrontation you almost got into.
Yeah, well, it's funny. You're sitting there with Roger, and I almost got into a confrontation over the weekend while I was with Roger. Actually, multiples. And what's funny is I'm no longer a guy who gets into confrontations. I generally stay to myself. But there's been something going on with me the last week or two where apparently I'm very open to confrontation. Well, you can ask Roger yourself about the confrontations we avoided at the U2 concert. But actually, I'll ask you this to keep this one short. You're at a rock concert. Is there are you not allowed to talk? Let's say you're general admission, you're on the floor, songs are playing. Do you have to, are you not allowed to talk? Is it like a movie theater?
No, you're allowed to talk.
I agree.
Yeah.
So I was talking to Roger, and some guy behind me told me to shut the fuck up. And I didn't respond well to that. So and then it happened multiple times. Two different guys asked me to asked us to stop talking during the music, and I was like, that's what I get for going to an old people concert and for Roger liking U2.
Yeah, exactly.
Imagine at a Metallica show or like a real rock show. No one's saying anything about that. You go to a Slipknot show, nobody's asking you to pipe down.
If they do, hear you anyway. It's Slipknot.
If they do, they're just hitting you. You don't use words. But either way, end up with no confrontation. Well, probably a lot thanks to Roger. But then at my kids' Little League game, we've got a doubleheader, and we're playing against the team that my son was on last year, and his coach was a moron. So when we signed up for this year, you're allowed to say, do you want to be on with the same coach or not? And I said, absolutely not. So we get put on a different team, and in the first game, there's a bunch of chippiness. There's kids talking shit to each other. There's kids shoving each other at home plate because somebody blocked the plate and got slid into, and it was starting to get a little ugly. A fat kid on their team called a kid on our team fat, and he got all emotional about it. It was a crazy game. So the umpires gave warnings to all the kids, said, hey, no more talking noise, no more using cuss words, no more talking to each other on the field. All right. So Holden caught the whole first game. So he was he didn't play in the field in the first inning of the second game. And the basically what happened was we put up 8 runs in the first inning of game 2. We won game 1. It was probably closer than it should have been. We let them get back into the game, and it got a little chippy. Game 2, we start off 8-0.
Oh, so you rangered him.
Yeah, and in the bottom of the inning, they hit a ball over our center fielder's head, and it's an inside the park home run. And it's now 8-1, and they are cheering like they won the World Series. And Holden, who is sitting in the dugout or standing at the fence on the dugout, is annoyed and says, he yells to the pitcher, "Don't worry about it. I don't know why they're cheering. We're kicking their butts anyway." And a reminder, Holden knows all these kids. These are the kids that he played with last year. So their first base coach turns around to Holden and says, "Well, they're cheering because he hit a home run. You should want to do that too." And I was already kind of talking to Holden and saying, "Hey, we've already been warned. Don't yell things out to the field.
But he wasn't talking to the other team, right?
He wasn't. But I just said, let's keep it cool. Let's not start drama in this one.
Absolutely.
So as I'm walking away, the first base coach turns around to our dugout and looks at Holden and says, I don't know whose kid you are, but your parents need to teach you some sportsmanship.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
And I turned, I had the split second of, oh, geez, is this really going to happen?
And then it goes red, and yeah.
And I turned around and I said, sorry, what did you say? And he was like, nothing. And I said, no, I think I heard what you said. Did you say, I don't know whose kid you are, but they need to teach you some sportsmanship? Because that's my kid. And if you want to say something, go ahead and say something. And I said, first of all, you don't need to talk to my kid, my son. Secondly, don't talk to our players. Like, you worry about your team. I don't talk to your players. Don't talk to mine. Don't try to tell my kid about sportsmanship. And Little League is a little bit different from what I like, with my older son. He never played Little League. He was playing club ball at a very young age. And those coaches, like, you just don't. It's a rule of thumb is you don't talk to the other team's kids. It's unacceptable.
Right.
In Little League, there's like more of a community, everybody's trying to help everybody environment. I still don't like it. I don't want people to talk to my kid. I don't want people to talk to the kids on my team. But I was pissed. Eventually, he came up to me and apologized. I think what really drove me crazy was that I had already reprimanded him.
Yeah.
And I don't need help. They made it feel like he was trying to help me parent, and that's the last thing I need. So, but it got a little hairy for a second there. But it was quite obvious he did not want to have the confrontation. I'm a lot bigger than him, which I always say, if you don't want to fight with big people, don't say crazy shit to big people. But
exactly.
But there you go. It was avoided. It was avoided.
It's funny because I remember you had a couple incidents when you were here. There were a couple times in Vegas where I had to talk you down off of things where you were not in the wrong in any of them. I will say that.
I don't go around looking for trouble. I promise you.
No. And I was like, all I was thinking, and at the time you were fighting, I'm thinking maybe I should just let this guy fuck with him and find out what happens.
I'd probably break my hip now is the problem. But also, fortunately, I was like the youngest guy at the U2 concert. So there was like everybody who talked shit to me was old, and then they immediately regretted talking shit to me. So, but it was... I think I would have held up okay there. With on the baseball field, who knows? But,
you never know how old these parents are because...
But again, I don't think I was in the wrong in any of these situations.
It doesn't sound like it at all.
You can ask Roger later if he thought I was the asshole or if they were the assholes, but I'm pretty sure they were the assholes in all these instances.
I'm sure they were. I still to this day don't realize why people think it's a good idea to fuck with you, even now.
Brother Bear says, which kid used to mop up other kids on the playground? That was Holden. He's still like, he's 11 years old and he's like 5'4", and he wears a size 11 and a half shoe. He's a giant. He's a giant kid, but he's a nice kid. He doesn't look to start shit, but sometimes when shit gets started, you gotta handle your business.
Yeah, well, it doesn't sound like you were in the wrong, but I'm glad Roger was there, just because Roger can just step in. Roger's been around to talk me down on stuff too. And usually it's just he can just step in front of me and take the punch. That's what he does. So
he didn't offer that for me for some reason.
No, but before we get started with the other stuff, but yeah, you know what? In all the time we hung out there, I mean, there wasn't very many incidents. None of them was ever your fault. I mean, you weren't looking for anything. We were one time we were just walking down the friggin' strip and some guy wanted to talk shit over something.
Yeah.
But
Pellyrat says you could not pay me enough to see U2 unless it was at the Sphere. It was at the Sphere.
Okay.
So which was freaking incredible. I mean, it was an unbelievable show. So Roger gave me a ticket. It was awesome. So thanks to Roger for that. But it was one of the coolest again, I'm not a U2 fan. I think I could sing along to like the chorus of about 3 or 4 songs. I don't care about U2. but it was one of like probably the 10 best, coolest shows that I've ever been to, period. Just because of the building and because the show itself, it's unbelievable.
Well,
I can't wait till Taylor plays there. Oh my God.
So had you not been in there before?
I hadn't been in there before. No, this is the first. These are the first shows that are being done there. These U2 shows. So I've never had a reason or an opportunity to be in there, but it is incredible.
U2's kind of like Irish Nickelback. You know every song. You just don't necessarily like them. You know.
God, and like the bad thing, like the screen is so awesome, and you can see all the wrinkles. And these are some fucking old dudes, man. Like they're not holding up all that well, but yeah, it was a really fun time. And yes, I am a Swiftie, of course. Why would you even ask something like? Of course I am.
Welcome in day one, Don. I love her. Chuck's here, Joel's here, B. Hannon's here, Bear Brothers here, Pelly Rat, obviously you mentioned. All you guys, man. Appreciate you listening. Before we get on to the gambling and the sport and the not beating up people stuff. First off, you probably noticed my neck looks great. I mean, comparatively speaking to what I was doing. I mean, I've got.
I can see that you've got a neck. For the last couple of episodes, you've been doing this.
Yeah.
And I didn't know. I thought maybe your neck got removed and you were just a head on top of shoulders. But it does appear that you've got a neck again. Congratulations.
Yeah, and I was telling Raj when he got here, it's just little stuff. Like I went for therapy Wednesday. And like, man, I hadn't been able to tie my shoes. I hadn't been able to do anything. I could barely walk. And I got there Wednesday and like just automatically lifted my leg over the little bed thing they have and straddled it. And I'm like, whoa, where'd that come from? I hadn't been able to do that. And it feels better. I mean, I'm still not 100% because it gets really sore after the therapy. But it's been a revelation. I mean, I'm probably a week away from starting to run again.
Nice.
Which I'm looking forward to. And he told me I should be able to lift weights in about a month. So
that's awesome, man. Congratulations.
Yeah, it's just
just don't fall down again.
Exactly. So yeah, I'm gonna drink, but I gotta thank my guy at the Houston Back and Neck Clinic, man. He's done an amazing job. Lawyer Dave hooked me up with him, and I can't say enough about how much better and it just changes everything, man, because it's when you can't. And I know when you went through the knee surgery, I don't know if it was quite the same, but like when I couldn't do anything, I was just depressed. You know, I mean, it was like I can barely walk the dog. I can barely get down the stairs. I can barely walk. One night I had to actually Uber home a block and a half from PJ's. It was so bad. And I felt horrible about that. And it's like, and it just affects everything you do because it affects your back and your legs and your arms.
Yep.
And now I'm like, hey, I feel
getting there.
I feel like myself again.
Yeah, you still look like shit, but you're feeling better, and that's what matters.
I'm always going to look like shit. That's about saying.
Yeah.
I'm a hard four. We know that. But yeah, and we were doing a pod at PJ's on Sunday during the Texans game, and you'll never guess what number I drew. 4, of course.
There you go.
Yeah, so it's a theme now. But no, it's nice to, you know, and when I got off the table Wednesday, I stood straight up for the first time in forever. And I kind of looked at my doctor and it's like, damn, you're a tiny. I didn't even know that. So, all right, I got to tell you about the Phoenix on Westheimer, where I am right now. Rogelio's here. I think Tang's on the way. I think Brandon may be on the way. We got some other people coming. Great soccer bar. And the reason we didn't do it last week is because they had so much afternoon soccer. It would have been very, very loud. But any soccer you're into, you got the Dynamo coming up Monday night. That'll be fun.
Are they in the playoffs?
They're in the playoffs. Game 2, they're up 1-0 in the playoffs already.
Damn.
Yeah, when you were here, the Dynamo always sucked. So
that's true.
But anyway, they're going to be playing Monday night. They'll have a great crowd here. Tomorrow's Premier League. They've been having Champions League going on and other cups and everything they have here at the Phoenix. It's a great soccer bar. It's also a great place to watch football. I'm debating coming over here to watch UH tomorrow if it doesn't conflict too much with the soccer. But great food. Today they got the grilled pork chop special, which I've been eyeing. And every day is a different special. Food comes up with something incredible. Great staff. And come on out. It's a great place. We'll be here until 5 o'clock today. And usually I'm here during the week, like on Tuesdays. So you can always find me. All right. Let's get to the fun stuff. Let's talk a little. college football wasn't all that interesting last week, except for Kansas beating your Oklahoma Sooners.
Yeah, and it didn't really come as a surprise to me. This Oklahoma defense has kind of started to show some cracks. So, good win for Kansas, and they're on my my list of teams to fade this week. On top of that, so, but the first playoff rankings came out, and I think that's what's interesting. And we talked about this on my pod. Like, I think you can narrow down the teams that actually have a chance to get to the playoff. Thus, you're narrowing down the amount of teams that you can actually draw out a path for them to win the championship. But I think there are now 10 teams.
That was a number I was going to give, actually,
where I can see a path. And it's not exactly the top 10, because I don't see a path anymore for Oklahoma. I don't see a path anymore for Penn State. But I do see one for Ole Miss and Mizzou, which, I mean, they're unlikely paths, and Missouri's starts this week. If they beat Georgia, they've got a really good path. But I think that I know they're going to rank 25, and that's what's going to matter to people. But I think there are now about 10 teams that have a legit chance, a legit path anyway. I shouldn't say chance, because the likelihood of some of these things to happen is pretty slim, like in Missouri's case. But they actually have a path. I think there's 10 teams now.
Well, I'm going to give you one that's outside the top 10.
Oh, okay.
And again, I think it's unlikely. But if LSU wins out, that will include wins over Alabama and most likely Georgia. Even with 2 losses, I don't see how you keep them out.
The problem is, I mean, I guess it could be a tiebreaker scenario, because Ole Miss beat them. They would then beat Alabama, and Alabama beat Ole Miss. So I'm not exactly sure how the tiebreaker would work in that situation. But also, we've seen LSU against one of the teams that I think the team that has the best chance of making the playoff today is Florida State.
Yeah.
And Florida State already beheaded LSU. So I think you may be right. Like
I'm just saying, I think they have a path.
They have a path that would require help. Now, let me ask you a scenario. And I discussed this with Scott, and I don't know that we came to a consensus on this. Let's pretend there's a world where Michigan, Florida State, and Washington are all unbeaten. I think this is unlikely, but let's just, for the sake of this exercise, they're all 13-0. They've won their conference. They're unbeaten. Georgia loses in the SEC championship game to Alabama. Alabama's 12-1. Georgia's 12-1. Texas is 12-1 as the Big 12 champion. Who gets in that situation?
I would guess Alabama.
Even though Texas beat Alabama head-to-head in Alabama?
Yeah, because I think those early games, you go and you look at the losses, right? And, like Texas losing to Oklahoma is better than Oklahoma losing to Kansas, right?
Sure.
So Texas should be ahead of Oklahoma, even though there's a head-to-head there. And I think that's the kind of thing it would come down to. Now, I don't think all that's going to happen, but I think it'd be fun. It's the last year where we can really have chaos, because
there would be chaos.
Yeah, once it's 12, it's going to be like, okay, they're in.
I think to me, in that situation, if Texas won at Alabama, I would say Texas warrants being in. They proved on their field. We're not even talking a neutral. They went to Alabama and won. To me, that would put them in. But I don't think the committee can see a possibility where LSU or where the SEC champion isn't in the playoff. Like, I think the committee would be like terrified of that. Unless
it were a 2-loss LSU, I think a 1-loss Texas, yes, right? Especially with a win over Oklahoma in the championship game. Although it may.
Oh, yeah. Now, the SEC is not good enough this year to get in a 2-loss team over a 1-loss team from another conference. Like, it would take for LSU. That's why I said for LSU it would take, like another loss by the Big 12. It would take multiple losses by a Pac-12 team. I think it would be. That's why it's tough. The SEC, like pretty much the entirety of the time that you and I were doing our show together, it was the SEC and then a big gap, and then the Big 10, and then a big gap, and everyone else. It's not that way anymore.
No,
The
really
SEC the SEC this year, and I'm not saying the SEC is still not the best football conference like overall. Like I think year in and year out it will be. This season, the SEC is not dominant. It is not the runaway train of the best conference in football. So if there was ever a year where you could make an effort or make a choice to leave out the SEC, it would be when there's a one-loss champion from it and there's other options. So that said, I don't think Washington's going unbeaten.
No.
I'm not sure what's going to happen in the Big Ten. I don't know who it's going to be. I tend to think Michigan is going to finish. They're going to run the table, but it's certainly interesting. And I think that what the SEC will have though is whoever plays in the SEC championship is going to get another great data point.
Right.
And unlike the Big Ten, where the Big Ten championship game is technically Michigan and Ohio State, because the next week, the winner of that game is going to play some shitty team that people are going to look like and go, man, well, all right, well, you beat Minnesota. Awesome. Here's a trophy. So it does make it interesting in that way.
Well, and we talk about the SEC. I think after Ohio State and Michigan, and I'm not even sure how good they are because they're playing a bunch of bums.
Yep.
Now, Ohio State does have the win over Notre Dame, which looks better and better every week. And they beat Penn State. But, boy, I look at Michigan's resume, and I'm like,
Yeah, Michigan's played no one.
Yeah.
But they were there last year, and by the end of it, they'll have beat Penn State and Ohio State if they're going to get in. So you go, oh, okay, well, it makes sense. And what Michigan's doing that a lot of other teams aren't is when they're playing these crappy teams, they look really good. Like Georgia has barely been able to cover all year. Michigan's calling numbers on teams.
Yeah, the eye test with Michigan is pretty strong. And but again, until we see them against one of these studs, I have my doubts. Washington, it's interesting. Washington, early on, I thought might be the best team in the country. But defensively, they're not as good as I thought they were.
I agree.
And I think that they were very lucky to beat Oregon, who I think may be better than them. And it's funny because it started with the Arizona game. And that's when I started paying attention to Arizona when they switched quarterbacks. And they barely lost to Washington. They barely lost to USC, game they should have won. Then they just housed Washington State. Biggest bet I made, other than Rice last weekend, was Arizona money line against Oregon State. And, and so I like where they're going. And I think they've got an up arrow by them. And I look at Washington, I'm like, where's the dominance I saw early? Where is that? I mean, these are good teams you're playing, but even and the reason I bring up Arizona, even with that up arrow, you still should have taken them to the woodshed.
Yeah,
and they didn't. I mean, that game was actually pretty close in terms of yardage and everything. So I'm worried about Washington. I think Oregon going in and housing Utah. And we talked about this a little bit last week. That as good as Utah is at home, they're not as good as Oregon. But Oregon left no doubt. Right?
Nope. And they're really good. And I think if they played Washington tomorrow, Oregon would beat them.
Or on a neutral, or at home.
Yeah.
I think they win anywhere but Washington. And I think they played 10 times. I think Oregon wins 7 of them.
Yep.
And it just so happened that Washington got that one. And I love Washington. But, yeah, I'm not I'm not going to get too crazy about them right now. And I'm not at all mad that they're not in the top 4 because I do think Florida State's earned that spot. They, even though Clemson's not Clemson anymore, that was a good win at the time. They beat LSU, who's, it was week 1, but LSU's turning into a monster.
Yep.
I have no problem with Florida State being number 4.
Although I do think you should be careful about LSU turning into a monster because, like, we're all saying, well, LSU's defense is playing a lot better now, and they are. But sometimes, like when you play Auburn and you play Army, your defense starts to look better. Like when they were playing these offenses that have a pulse, they still weren't stopping anybody. So I do think it's LSU's in for a real test this week, obviously with Alabama.
Absolutely. I mean, they have to win that game, or we're not having this conversation. But where I saw a change in the LSU defense was the second half of the Missouri game. And Missouri's very good. I think we've established that too. And And I remember them getting a sack and the announcer saying, well, there's LSU's first sack in 2 games.
That's crazy.
And then, but then they really started. It's like the light came on a little bit. I mean, they're still not good on defense. Let's not, just because you shut out Army, I'm sorry,
right.
That doesn't mean anything.
Army's backup quarterback, by the way.
Yeah. But the fact that they, I think they're better. I don't know that they're good enough to beat Alabama. I think their offense is good enough to beat Alabama.
I agree. Their offense is good enough to beat anybody.
Yeah,
but the problem is you're going to play both sides.
Right.
I mean, their offense was good enough to beat Florida State, but they gave up 45 points. So, and the thing with Alabama particularly is it looks like the way to really get to make Milroe bad is to get pressure on him, and LSU's just not getting pressure, and that's a real worry. Like if you're not going to be able to pressure Milroe, he's going to find a way to beat you, and he can make these deep throws. For me, it was this game was just as simple as my power rating on a neutral field. It was Bama minus 3.5. I'm laying 3 at Alabama. It doesn't make sense to me. So I think even if I'm underrating LSU, which maybe I am, there's no way I'm underrating it so badly that Alabama has no negative home field advantage.
Right.
That's impossible.
Exactly. No, I'm with you on that. I like Alabama this week, and we'll get into those. But first, I want to tell you guys about Lanham Industries, and these guys are your place to go if you're on Lake Livingston, which hopefully sometime in the next 6 months, I'm going to get all the stuff done that I'm working on, and I'm going to get me a place on Lake Livingston. And guess who I'm calling? Because you know what they do? Cleaning.
Everything.
Yeah, they do everything. And they're veteran-owned, by the way. We've talked about that. Cleaning, lawn care, laundry, maintenance, inventory management, property management services available. Guess what I don't do? Laundry, maintenance, stuff like that. But a great crew, and they're just good people. And Andrew's a big fan of the show. He's a big fan of yours, AJ. And I'm happy to have them supporting the Falconcast. And if you've got a place out there, please use them and take care of the people who are supporting the Falconcast. And if you're getting a place out there, just give them a call, 936-581-6166, or go to lanhamindustries.com. And if you can't remember any of that, my email's at the bottom there, thefalconcast@yahoo.com. Send me an email. I will put you in touch with them. I'll call Andrew personally for you. How's that?
That's very nice of you.
Yeah, Lanham Industries. Love those guys. All right. So let's move ahead to this week. The game that's interesting to me, and I think there's some value on Texas here because, look, Kansas State is playing as well as anybody right now. Their last 3 games have been through the roof. Their season is almost exactly identical to last year. But I also can find, I knew UH was up against it after 2 emotional games and then going to Manhattan. But they buried them. And they did the same thing to TCU. But I think there's a little value on Texas in this game because even though Kansas State usually plays them well, I just think that maybe there's a little overreaction from the market on Kansas State.
Well, it's funny you say they play them well because I'd argue the other side. Like over the last 6 years, and Texas has now won 6 straight against Kansas State. And when you think back to the last 6 years, besides Oklahoma, Kansas State's probably been the most consistent football program in the Big 12.
Yeah.
And Texas has been anything but consistent. So while Texas has been down, they've still found a way to beat Kansas State, while Kansas State's been very solid. I'm still not totally sure what Malik Murphy is today. I believe in his upside, but he didn't look special against BYU. I think the difference for Texas. Oh, go ahead.
No, he did look better with a week of practice though than he
for sure
getting thrown in against UH.
I will say I think Texas, their ability to stop the run is a big difference maker here. Kansas State's looked really good with this Avery Johnson kid running his packages at quarterback. Although they didn't even need him last week against UH because Will Howard did whatever he wanted through the air. But Texas allows less than 98 yards rushing per game. And with this new balanced look of K-State, I tend to lean to the horns here. I think both teams struggle to put up points. Like if you force me to make a play on this game, it'd just be the under. I think this is a grimy type of game. I'm not sure if Kansas State is underrated. I do. I mean, I think this is a pretty fair number. Like I said, I would lean to the Horns, but I just think it's a tough match for teams to get points in.
Yeah, the thing with Kansas State is, and I know they're basically following the path they took last year to get to the championship game and win the championship.
Yep.
I just, again, I think Texas is better, and I think maybe they haven't gone through the dominant run that Kansas State has, but TCU's fallen apart. UH was in a tough spot. Those are games where it's easy to look good when you're beating the crap out of somebody too. So, all right. So let's get first off though, before we get to the other stuff. How much fun was it the other night, right before halftime, in the Northern Illinois Central Michigan game when they had that blizzard come through and you couldn't see a damn thing?
That was cool. Yeah, listen, we're getting into the fun action stuff where you get teams that are getting penalties for snowball throwing, for fans throwing snowballs. It's a wild world now. That's action football, baby.
Well, you know what? It's weird because I don't think they called a penalty the other night.
No, it was a different game. Yeah, but I mean that's what's happening now.
But Colorado State, they got a 15-yard penalty that helped Air Force on their drive that kind of put the game away.
Yep, that was a big penalty. Although I would also argue that maybe the snowball throwing, like after the snowball throwing stopped, Air Force suddenly got going. So maybe all those snowballs were working for a while, but then once you got the penalty, it screwed it up.
All right, let's look at a couple other games. Notre Dame at Clemson. Notre Dame is playing really well. I think everybody's kind of written Clemson off. Is there value in Clemson in this game?
It's not for me. This offense is so bad, and like I understand that they don't have a DeAndre Hopkins type, they don't have a Deshaun Watson or a Trevor Lawrence, but there's no reason they shouldn't be able to run the ball, and they can't run the ball. I think this number says that the market still respects Clemson as a great team, and the truth of Clemson is they're 4-4, and they might not be bowl eligible this year. So the one thing that worries me is backed against the wall. World says you suck. This is when Dabo usually gives his best performances, but Notre Dame's the only team I'd be willing to bet if I had to.
I think Dabo may be starting to forget how to coach.
Dabo's Jimbo Fisher Jr. He's like he's so stubborn and so unwilling to change his ways in a world where you have to, like, change is coming so fast in college football. If you're not willing to keep up with it, like if you're still using a BlackBerry, you're lost. And Dabo, like, he strikes me as a BlackBerry guy.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So that worries me. Like I just don't think he's willing to change his ways, and you can't keep up with the Joneses if you're not willing to get with the times.
Well, and I'll say this: like I've been saying this about A&M for 2 years. The defense hasn't been the same since Mike Elko left. I don't think they're nearly as good without Brent Venables, and because he does rely on his assistants for a lot of stuff, and now he's got a bunch of guys that. Well, who the hell are these guys? They were like third or fourth in line, and now they're out there calling plays. And I don't think they have the talent. I think you're right. There's not a stud receiver. There's not a Hopkins. There's not a Ross. Even
Sammy Watkins. Nobody that level.
Yeah, and let's be honest. I think at quarterback they don't have Deshaun Watson. They don't have Trevor Lawrence. They kind of had him, and they let him walk off to Oregon State, but that's okay.
But again, DJ didn't even look good until he got away from Dabo, because Dabo's not changing anything. Like it's just hard to win with like a dinosaur mentality. And speaking of A&M, like does that number feel short to you for Ole Miss?
It does.
-3 at home. Like Ole Miss is playing pretty good ball, man. And I don't totally get this line. They've been better defensively than I thought, but the offense isn't great. But it's good. Dart's fine. Judkins is awesome. Like, and fading the Aggies on the road is so easy. They've lost 8 straight road games. The last time A&M won a road game was at Missouri, the first road game of 2021. That's ages ago.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I think Max Johnson is bad. He holds the ball too long on the road. It's exasperated. I power rated this game at 2.5 on a neutral. So given the road struggles, the lesser quarterback, I like Ole Miss quite a bit this week.
I do too, and I mean I'm 100% with you on this for all the reasons you said, but also because I've watched enough of the Aggies this year to know that Lane Kiffin will find things to pick on in that defense.
Yeah,
and there are some holes, especially at cornerback. Their cornerbacks are vulnerable. You can beat them there, and Ole Miss can run the football. That's something that people don't talk about a lot. But they can run the football, and the Aggies' defensive line is talented. But I just don't think they're good football players. They have their moments, and offensively, I just don't think A&M has enough. And Max Johnson is a robot, and he's, and I think it's cute that his brother's a tight end. They try to throw him the ball too much. Let's just, I'm with you. I think this could turn ugly. Frankly, I think Ole Miss could, and I think so. You're telling me these teams are even on a neutral field?
They're saying, I mean, you probably give 2 points for home field. So they're saying that Ole Miss is maybe like a tick better. I just don't believe it.
No, and I know you've watched both these teams all year, just like I have, and Ole Miss is, running into Alabama. They didn't, that was tough, but. Otherwise, man, this team is just, I think they're really good. So I'm with you 100% on that. I saw some odds this week. I'm sure you get all the same emails I do. Jimbo Fisher, the favorite to be the first coach fired.
Oh, that's not surprising.
Second favorite, my guy, Dana Holgorsen.
Yeah. I mean, was this Power 5 only?
Yeah.
Okay. I was going to say, your boy Dimmel, he's not. It's a hard time for him right now.
Good old Dana Dismal.
Yep.
Yeah. Man, one of these, I told you some stories off air back in the day about him at UH. I'm sure the same thing is happening there. All right, so let's move on to some other games. By the way, pat on the back for both of us being on Rice last week. Plus 10.
Take my pat away for being on Army last week. They suck.
Yeah, a couple of my good friends were on Army. The guys I'm partnered with in the Survivor Pool and the Super Contest.
I was so mad because my whole handicap, I gotten information that Bryson Daly was going to be back and playing. So I'm like, oh, this is a great upgrade. They didn't put him in the game until they were down 13-0. And then they were like, I guess we'll put in our starting quarterback now. And then he wasn't that good either. So, I mean, it was a shitty pick, but I don't understand the thought of if your guy's healthy enough to play and your other guy had put up 0 points in the last 2 games, like maybe put the guy out there to start the game instead of waiting until you're down 13-0 because, as you know, service academies typically aren't built to play from behind.
No, and you know what? And I got to thank you for talking me out of Utah, so that saved me money. So the only 2 plays I made were Rice and the Arizona play. And I did the Arizona play after I hit Rice. And I did one of the Hoffman parlays with Rice where I took like Texas, Georgia, money line, It turned it into a plus 150.
Okay.
So, yeah. So all I had to do was be right about Rice. And, it was they could have won that game. But I'll take losing by 2. That was fine.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of good games this week. Missouri, Georgia. I mean, what do we really think about Missouri? I mean, that's the question.
I think Missouri's really good on offense. And rather than play aside on this one, I'm just going to look at the over again. One of my best hits last week was the over in the Florida Georgia game. It seemed counterintuitive because Georgia had just lost their best weapon. But what Bowers does is he's like a dink and dunk machine. You only throw short to him because he's going to get the ball and he's going to rumble and keep the chains moving. But what we saw was Georgia became more explosive because they don't have that middle security blanket. So they had to go down the field. And you saw Ladd McConkey come up big. We knew he was a good receiver. He just didn't get a lot of chances. Now he's getting chances. This Georgia offense is going to be more explosive now without their best player, which sounds weird, but that's just the way that Georgia offense was built. And then on the other side, Brady Cook's been one of the best quarterbacks in the country who doesn't get talked about. And,
exactly.
I think this game could look a lot. It'll be like a light version of the LSU Missouri game, where LSU put up 49 and Missouri put up 39. I think this, when I say light, this is probably like a 35-27 type game or a 35-24, but that's still plenty for it to go over. With a total in the mid 50s. So I like the over in this game more than anything. I think Missouri will make it interesting. Because I don't think this Georgia team is like flawless. Like the last 2 seasons, it's just felt like preordained that Georgia was going to win everything. Like I couldn't picture a world where someone was going to beat Georgia in the last 2 seasons.
Right.
I don't feel that way right now about this Georgia team. I feel like they're very gettable. I don't know if Missouri's good enough to get them, but I think they can push them.
I think they will, but the one thing about Georgia that I keep going back to every week, they wear you down with those linemen. Their front 7 on defense, their offensive line, and maybe their offensive line's not what it was, but it's still pretty damn good. And every game, it just seems like in the fourth quarter, you're beat up by the time you get a chance to try to make any kind of move against them. And so all right. And then the other game of interest to me, Washington at USC. Now, I'm not a USC fan because of their defense.
They suck.
And their defense is awful, right? And this is like old school UH, so it's kind of fun to watch. They can score points, but they can't stop anybody. And LSU's kind of the same way now. But and Caleb Williams is not playing well.
No.
Suddenly, he's forgotten how to play quarterback. But I look at this and the way Washington's playing. If USC can start scoring some points, I think it may be tough on Washington here. What's your thought on this one?
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody's going to score points in this game. Washington's defense isn't as good as we thought. USC's defense is just as bad as we thought. The total in this game, 76.5, which is a crazy number, but I'd only look it over.
Yeah.
But the numbers tick down from 3.5 to 3. I could only look at Washington here. I just think they're the much more complete team. Like, I know Washington's been struggling lately, but Washington's not struggling against Colorado. You know what I mean? Washington's not struggling against Cal. They're not playing an overtime game with Cal where Cal's going for a 2-point conversion to beat them. That only happens to bad teams. USC looks like a bad team. And the other difference between these two teams to me, Fred, is USC, all the goals that they had before the season are dead.
Yeah.
Like, they are not going to be the Pac. You're not going to be the Heisman. There's no Pac-12 championship. There's no college football playoff. Everything that you signed up to do this season is gone. Washington still has everything in front of them: a potential Heisman, potential Pac-12 championship game, potential playoff. Like they have everything that USC started the season with, and USC just feels like such a front-running team that since we started to see chinks in the armor, we just see more and more every week. So I don't want to back a USC team that I know just knows what they are now and has been exposed. So I've got no interest in backing them.
Yeah, it's funny. I always used to use this analogy when we were doing the show. USC's the front-running horse, right? They get that 5-length lead, you won't catch them. But boy, somebody goes up there and challenges them, they fold like a tent. So
see, you know who's the opposite of that this year to me is Oregon. Like, and yeah. I'd lay a big number with Oregon this week against Cal. Like, I think they're going to beat the shit out of Cal because Oregon, when they lost that game to Washington, they felt like they should have won, and they said we're better than this team. I think USC, especially when they lost the second game, they now know we're not that good, right. And it's just it's a mindset thing. And like Oregon is still going out, and Oregon, listen, they're the top rated team in the playoff ranking that has a loss. So they're going to look to put up style points. And,
absolutely.
You know, if at the end of the year they beat Washington and they're the top one-loss team in the country, they want to be in the conversation. So I think they still see goals in front of them. So they're still looking to beat up teams. I just think USC's rolling over. I think they know what they are, and it's not good.
All right, one more game in the Pac-12. You know, I'm telling you how much I've been following Arizona and how much I admire them. But if I'm getting inside of 3 with UCLA in that game, I got to take the Bruins.
Yeah, kind of. This is tough, man. I think I'm done fading Arizona. Like this is a pretty good team. Noah Fafita's better
Yeah,
than
yeah.
Jaden Delora. Like they're better with him. Jed Fish is doing maybe the best coaching job in the country. This team shouldn't even be good. Like they shouldn't be bowl eligible. They're good, and I generally like UCLA, but do I want to get in the way of what Arizona's done? Think about this. This is Arizona's losses this year. They lost to Washington by 7. Although that game they scored late and made it closer than it was. That's their one.
That was also the first game where they changed quarterbacks.
Yeah, that was a clean loss. Their other 2 losses are an overtime loss to USC, an overtime loss to Mississippi State. Let's say you flip one of those overtime results. You flip the coin and it comes up heads instead of tails. And this team is 6-2.
Yeah.
Like, or do we think of Arizona the same way? I think we think of them as like a legit good team. Now imagine they win both those coin tosses. I mean, we're talking about a team that's ranked in the top 20. So I don't know, man. They just beat an Oregon State team outright as 3-point dogs. I think Oregon State's better than UCLA. So I don't know that I want to. I don't know that I want to come off the 3 with a team that I don't think is as good as Oregon State. It's tough for me, man. I see where you're coming from. I think I'm going to stay away from it. If anything, I'd play the over in this game.
Well, it's funny because I mean I've been on Arizona like the last 3 weeks.
Smart man, keep cashing.
And you know that's why. At some point, though, I think that. But watching them play, I mean, they've got 2 amazing receivers, and this kid's a really good quarterback. But you know, they're prone to getting beat by the run, and they do give up the big play, but they're very well coached. And now I hate going against teams that have been putting money in my pocket.
Yeah,
but I just feel like this is a good spot for UCLA. Anything else you want to give the people before we move on to NFL?
I'll give you one for tomorrow. Boston College at Syracuse. Boston College catching 3 now. I actually bet this at plus 2.5. So I got the worst of the number, which means there's some money that's come in on Syracuse. I don't understand it. If you can get a 3, I'd take a 3. Syracuse in conference play is averaging 8.5 points per game. 8.5. Their offense scored 2 touchdowns in the entire month of October. And they're allowing 38 points per game. Boston College is the top rushing team in the ACC, 214 yards a game. And now they play a Syracuse team that is the worst rushing defense in the ACC at 210. Syracuse got outrushed last week, 318-0 against Virginia Tech. This team is absolutely dead right now. And Boston College is playing competent football. Castellanos, who's their quarterback, was banged up last week. Reports have been good on him, though. And the running backs are fine to carry the load if he has to stay in the pocket more. Syracuse is 0-8 ATS, coming off a loss in the last 2 seasons. And then you look at their strength of schedule. They beat an FCS team to start the season. Their other 3 wins combined 7-18 this season. This Syracuse team is 4-4, and people think, oh, they're adequate. Their last 4 games against conference opponents, they got housed in every one of them. They stink. So giving me Boston College with a field goal, I love that play.
And I don't know why Syracuse keeps getting love for. I mean, they're awful.
I don't get it.
I mean, yeah, and just because of the start, I don't think the market's adjusted to the fact that they're just bad. I love that play. In fact, I'm going to tell you on that play. 100%.
There you go. Let's get it.
All right. Before we get to the NFL. I got to tell you about my man, Dr. Linville. Had a great chat with him yesterday. And such a great guy. Does an amazing job with your hair. And guys, if you may not need a lot of work done, or maybe you just want to, look better and have hair. Well, that's what he does. And 95% or more of the grafts take because they're handled and prepared safety. It's an EO graft procedure. They take the hair off the back of your head. They put it on the top and the front and wherever you are. And he comes up with an individualized plan for each and every patient. And how about this? Only charges $4 per graft. Right now, a special, $3.50. Now, if that doesn't sound like a lot, I had 2,451 grafts. So you're going to save some money. And all you got to do is go to hairspecialisthouston.com/getfalconhair. And listen, holidays are coming up. If you want to get a present for your wife and actually have, or significant other, it can be a wife, it could be a girlfriend, could be your side piece, whatever. You want to get hair to look better, now's the time to do it. Or if you want to do something for her, guess what? Full service of plastic surgery. And there's nobody better than Dr. Linville. So go to hairspecialisthouston.com/getfalconhair, book a consultation, and your consult fee will be waived because you went to Get Falcon Hair. $150 value. So check it out. That's my man, Dr. Linville. Love him to death. Great guy. In fact, we're going to have a beer tomorrow. So
nice.
That's how cool he is. And Brandon just showed up. All right, let's get to some NFL. Let's start with tonight. I will say this. Yeah, I mean, I am not a Will Levis fan, and I've been anti-Will Levis since for a while. And everybody was giving me so much shit last week. Oh, 4 touchdown passes. You know who else had 4 touchdown passes in their debut for the Titans? Marcus Mariota. I think the Steelers will make an adjustment tonight. I just don't trust the Steelers to be able to beat anybody.
Yeah, I don't love a side in this game, and I think it's a low scoring game, but the total set super low. We were looking at ways to fade Will Levis because we thought that the market would be high on him. But actually, one of the ways that I came up with, it ends up being a play on Will Levis, but it's his rushing yard prop. I looked at him over 10.5 rushing yards. I think that
I don't mind that. I don't mind that at all.
I think he gets in a little bit of trouble. I think he gets pressured. And if you remember Will Levis at Kentucky, he can move a little bit. Yeah. He had 7 rushing attempts for 11 yards last week. 4 of those were kneel downs, though. So his stats were actually 4 rushes for 11 yards. He's going to run a little bit, and that was against a Falcons team that you can't really run on. The Steelers, the key to beating them is running on them. So I just think that he has a hard time going down the field, which he was able to against Atlanta. So I think he ends up running the ball a little bit more. 10.5 yards feels like a gettable number.
Yeah, and we also saw, old school DeAndre Hopkins where offensive pass interference every play, and he gets away with it most of the time. But he was able to get separation when he does. Hell, I could throw the ball to him.
And Rod says Steelers play tough at home, leaning to them. Steelers always play tough when they are the dog. We talk about Mike Tomlin as a dog. You and I have been talking about this for years, Fred. Mike Tomlin, when everybody says, oh, you can't win, you're not good enough, blah, blah, blah. This is Mike Tomlin as a home favorite against a team, a quarterback making his second start, a team that everybody thought was selling off all their parts a week ago. These are the kind of games that Mike Tomlin historically loses.
Right.
So if I were forced to play a side, it would be the Titans.
All right, Miami, Kansas City in Germany. Really interested in this game we actually sent them a really good game. But, boy, Miami has not done it against good teams, right? They played 2 good teams and gotten their ass kicked, and Kansas City's coming off a loss. What do you think here?
Yeah, I think what you think. I haven't believed in the Dolphins this year. The best team that they've beat is the Chargers, and they beat them in a coin flip game first week of the season. The 2 times they really stepped up in class and played like a top 10 level team, top 5 level team was Buffalo and Philly, and they got just absolutely smacked in both those games. Like you said, the Chiefs coming off a loss, pissed off. Top 5 defense in DVOA. I can't imagine the offense looks this bad 2 weeks in a row.
No.
So until the Dolphins do it against a top-tier team, I'm going to keep fading them. And Mahomes in his career as a short favorite, 3-point favorite or less, as a dog, is 19-6 ATS. So when there's doubters on Patrick Mahomes, he comes through.
And I'll just point this out. The Chiefs are usually not as dominant in October. And I know it's only a week away, but we're in November now, and this is where they start picking it up again. They always go through that little, they fade a little bit in October, and they start picking it up in November, December. So I like Kansas City a lot.
The one thing I don't like is they're going out late. Like they're going. Yeah. I like that the Dolphins got there early, but I still don't like it enough that I think the Dolphins are going to beat a good team because they haven't.
Yeah, why do teams keep doing that? We saw it with the Ravens a couple weeks ago. They decided to go out early, and guess what? It worked. So
Yep.
Minnesota at Atlanta. Atlanta very good at home, but there'll be a quarterback change there.
Quarterback change for both teams.
Yeah, well, Minnesota didn't have a choice in theirs, really. Although I guess Atlanta didn't either. But Kirk Cousins is dead for the year. I actually like the Joshua Dobbs pickup, but not for this week, obviously.
Yeah, I don't really care who's playing quarterback. I can't picture the Falcons being a 5-point favorite over another NFL football team. I don't think the Falcons are very good. Their record says they're 500, but they've got the second worst scoring differential amongst teams that are 500 or better, only behind Pittsburgh. And their wins came against Carolina, Green Bay, Houston, and Tampa. Ooh,
yeah,
they're 1-4 as a favorite. And the Vikings, while obviously the drop-off is big from Kirk Cousins to Jaren Hall, the Vikings defense has been good. And the Falcons defense has not been good. Everybody talks about the Falcons defense being better. DVOA says it's not. They're 25th in defensive DVOA. Right. To me, I think that you're probably catching a little bit of value. I think that's going to be like a really, really public side to say, oh, well, the Vikings lost their quarterback. You got to play the Falcons. Taylor Heineke, of all the qualified quarterbacks for PFF last year, he was the second lowest graded guy. The only guy he was better than was Zach Wilson. And that's not good company. He had more turnover-worthy plays than any quarterback in the league last year. Taylor Heineke is not good. There's a reason he's not the starter in Washington. There's a reason he's not even the starter in Atlanta until now. He's not very good. And I know he won a couple games early in his career, and everybody's like, ooh, shiny new quarterback. The guy stinks. So laying 5 with him is not something I'm interested in.
No, not at all. And like you said, he had a couple games early where he played pretty well, and everybody thought, oh, this guy's okay. And then once you adjust to him, he's nothing. I mean, he's lucky to be on the field. This is a game we're looking at for our survivor pool. Arizona at Cleveland. I've seen a lot of Clayton Toonover, and I just don't think he's an NFL quarterback. This is a tough place for a start against a very good Cleveland defense. And I don't really care who's playing quarterback for Cleveland. I think that this feels like a brown spot to me.
I'm with you. I played, and this doesn't help you for Survivor, but I played Arizona's team total under 14.5. Where are their points coming from? Mercario, who's been playing running back for them, he's not at practice. Their offensive line is banged up. Clayton Tune is not ready to be on an NFL football field. So I'm with you. His first snap in the NFL is on the road against one of the best defenses in the league. There's only one side I could look at.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, let's move on to Los Angeles at Green Bay. Boy, Green Bay sucks. Let's just be honest. Jordan Love is awful.
I'm with you, and this is another thing where, Matt Stafford's hurt. Okay, are we sure that Jordan Love's better than Brett Rippon? Are we? No. I'm not sure. So Green Bay laying a full field goal doesn't make sense to me. I think Jordan Love stinks. I think the Packers are really in the discussion for worst team in the league. So the fact that they are favored by 3 over anyone is insane to me. Here's what I know about these two teams. You've got questions at quarterback for both teams. What I do know is the Rams have a bunch of weapons at least. I could see Cooper Kupp or Puka Nacua having a big game, but who's gonna have a big game for the Packers? Aaron Jones is beat up. I don't know where it comes from. So it's Rams or pass for me.
Yeah, I'm with you 100% on that one. Commander at Patriot. This one is just kind of a hard pass for me because I just don't know what the Patriots are, and the Commanders have given up 2 of their best defensive players, so I don't know where they are either.
Well, here's the thing about the Commanders giving up those 2 players. The Commanders' defense, and this is kind of a little secret amongst people, but the Commanders' defense sucked already. Right. So, losing a couple pass rushers for a team that wasn't getting after the quarterback anyway didn't matter that much. I bet this yesterday at 3.5. I'd probably still bet it at 3, although for less. This number says the Patriots are pretty significantly better than the Commanders. I don't think that's true. They're still, the Patriots are one of the worst offenses in the league, And you talk about what's changed since last week. Yeah, the Commanders lost a couple defensive guys. The Patriots lost their best wide receiver for the season. Kendrick Bourne was the only player on New England that had at least 250 receiving yards. That's a crazy number at this point in the year. He had 4 of their 9 touchdown catches, and he's gone now. So this is what I do know is Washington can score. Washington can put up points. They've got weapons. Sam Howell, I don't know if he's good, but I know he chucks the ball around. Sam Howell's good for fantasy. He's going to put up some points. The Pats, I don't know where their points come from, so I like the dog here.
Yeah, you know what? I'm actually kind of coming around that Sam Howell may be one of those, empty yardage guys, but he gets a lot of them, and I like him. So. All right, let's Lawyer Dave in the house, so we'll get his thoughts on some of this in a minute.
All right.
All right, Chicago at New Orleans. Saints came up with a big game last week. I still just don't trust Dennis Allen, but it's hard for me to have any love for Chicago.
Yeah, this is my pass game for the week. I just want nothing to do with this. I'd love to play plus 8.5, plus 9 here, but I just can't. I think the Bears suck. The Saints looked pretty decent last week, but Derek Carr as a favorite is dreadful historically. Dennis Allen's the worst ATS coach in history, so I don't know.
All right, Seattle at Baltimore. I've loved the Seahawks all year, but this is one of those cross-country noon games against a team that's very good in Baltimore. It'd be hard for me to take the Seahawks in this spot.
Yeah, RJ and I crossfired on this on the pod yesterday. He likes the Seahawks. I like the Ravens. These were teams that were on different ends of the bad beat spectrum last week. The Ravens not covering against the Cardinals is terrible. But I think the Seahawks winning that game, much less covering against the Browns, is wild. It took Kevin Stefanski being really, really dumb.
Right.
But I think the Ravens are in the conversation for best team in the league at this point.
I agree.
I think the Seattle defense, like everybody's talking about, the Seattle defense, they're really good all of a sudden. Well, the last 4 weeks they've played PJ Walker, Josh Dobbs, broken Joe Burrow, and Daniel Jones. And then before that, they played Andy Dalton, who put up 27 points on them. Like, I don't know that the Seahawks defense is all of a sudden good. I think the Seahawks defense just went through a really good part of their schedule. And the Seahawks are banged up. They're banged up at running back. They're banged up at wide receiver.
In this space right here, I have an
I don't trust them yet, so I like Baltimore here.
That area is open.
All right, Tampa Bay at your Houston Texans. You know what? I like the way the Texans have progressed. I mean, both of the most recent losses. Sundays was awful because they got penalties all the way down the field on defense on that last drive, which is just unacceptable. But I think those are things they'll clean up. I still think I like Tampa here a little bit.
I lean to Houston. Part of it is Stroud. I was looking through his numbers, and probably more than any quarterback in the league, the gap between Stroud's performance when he's pressured versus when he's not is massive. So PFF has him as the 10th best quarterback in a clean pocket, 48th when he's pressured. The Bucs are 27th in pressure rate, despite being 5th in blitz rate. So Tampa blitz, but they still don't get pressure. That's good news. And I also think rookie quarterbacks tend to play so much better at home. They beat the Saints at home outright. They beat the Steelers at home outright. Both those teams, I think, are better than Tampa. So I lean to the Texans here.
Yeah, and the offensive line's finally getting a little bit healthy too, and that's going to be big moving forward for them. And I think with Pierce being banged up, I think we're going to see more carries for Singletary, which may be better for the offense. Like no one wants to admit it, but Dameon Pierce is not very good. So I think maybe you get something out of the run game this week, which you haven't. Yeah, that was a position I wish they had addressed in the draft because I'm not a big Dameon Pierce guy, but I'll tell you what. I think we might see some more of Mike Boone down the road too, and I like him, man. I think this kid can play. So, all right, let's zip through these last few because we're running late. Indianapolis at Carolina. Obviously, we know what the Panthers did last week. I still think Indy's got something going on there. I think they're well coached, but yeah, I just don't know how good they are.
Should the Colts be damn near field goal favorites on the road? To
No.
me, the answer is no.
Against anybody.
3 straight weeks, the Colts have allowed a team to score their season high in points. They let PJ Walker put up 38 points. Like, I just don't trust him defensively right now. Minshew's chucking the ball around, but he's sloppy with it. I'd lean to Carolina here.
Giants at Las Vegas. It looks like Daniel Jones will be back. Las Vegas fires everybody in the middle of the night last night.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what's going on with the Raiders.
I think the Giants are better than people think they are. Like, you look at the Giants record and you go, oh, the Giants stink. But then look at their schedule. The Giants have played the 49ers, the Bills, the Cowboys. Like, they've played every good team in the league. It's no wonder that their record is what it is. The Raiders are, like, the fact that they went to Aiden O'Connell, like, they're hitting a full reset. These are already the 2 worst offenses in the league per DVOA. The Giants have a better defense, though, and I think they've got some fight in them. The Raiders can't stop the run. I think you see a Saquon Barkley heavy game. The Giants only 1.5. I tend to like them. I think using them in a teaser is a great job this week. I don't think the Raiders can run and hide from anybody with O'Connell at quarterback.
Yeah, and I think with Jones back, it'll help. I mean, last week they were down to some guy from, some mafia dude playing quarterback. So, and the Jets defense is really good, and the Giants should have won that game. They really should have. Missed field goal and goofy stuff at the end of the game.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm kind of with you here. Dallas and Philadelphia. Man, I want to take the Cowboys here. I really do, because the Eagles have they've got injuries, they've got problems. I really want the Cowboys, but I just can't bring myself to pull the trigger.
Yeah, it'd be Cowboys or pass for me, but I like the over in this game. The Cowboys offense has really found a groove. They're throwing on first down, which they weren't doing early in the season. Dak's moving around in the pocket, which he wasn't doing early this season. And you have to be able to do that against this Eagles front. The Eagles are vulnerable against the pass because you can't really run on them. And they're particularly vulnerable against the pass in the slot, where CeeDee Lamb's going to have a field day.
Yep.
And then on the other side, Cowboys are weaker against the rush than the pass, but they're surprisingly still running a ton of man coverage. Even when Diggs went out, they're still running almost exclusive man. And A.J. Brown, number 1 graded wide receiver against man coverage. The last 5 times these teams have played each other, the average score has been 62. Only one of those 5 games had both Dak and Jalen Hurts playing. So they're getting to 62 with Cooper Rush, Gardner Minshew, Andy Dalton playing quarterback. Both quarterbacks healthy-ish. I know Hurts is a little banged up.
Right.
I think this sails over 47.
I love that. Buffalo at Cincinnati, and how many times are we going to see replays of the near death from last year?
Yeah, a million. To me, I lean Buffalo here, and the only reason why is I don't think that they're a great matchup for Cincinnati. Cincinnati seems to have their number. But last year, going into that DeMar Hamlin game, Buffalo was -2.5, almost -3 at Cincinnati. Now the Bengals are 2-point favorites in the same place. What has happened that warrants a 4.5-point line flip since that game happened? Like, are the Bengals way better than they were? I don't think you can say that.
No.
Are the Bills that much worse? I don't think you can say that. So it just feels like there's been an overreaction to a good week from Joe Burrow. The Bengals were my favorite play last week. That was my biggest bet in the NFL was the Bengals against the 49ers. They looked awesome. But does that mean that Joe Burrow, everything is fine? All questions are answered? I don't know. Not enough that I want to have Buffalo be dogged in a spot where they were almost 3-point favorites a year ago, not even a year ago, 7-8 games ago.
Yeah, and I think Buffalo is on the verge of going on a real tear, and I think it might start here. So, all right, last game of the week, Chargers at the Jets on Monday night. Man, I keep betting the Chargers. They keep letting me down. I don't know what to do here.
Yeah, fuck the Chargers. Yeah, they're an endless pit. The Chargers shouldn't be favored by a field goal over anyone. That's what it boils down to, much less more than a field goal. But I don't know, man. I don't want to bet Zach Wilson either. Like
Yeah.
the Chargers last week in a spot where the Chargers never get margin. What'd they do last week against a bad quarterback? They got margin.
Right.
They're a tough team to figure out. I generally just want to stay away from their games, to be honest. So I wish I had more for you. I don't trust them.
Yeah. All right. So your favorite play of the ones we've talked about?
It's probably Kansas City. And I know that it sounds kind of square, but yeah, I think that they, again, I think we're basically just saying I need the best quarterback in the world to go win a game. I'll take my chances. He does so well in these spots where he's basically just asked to win. It's hard for me to fade that. So I trust Andy Reid more to like. When you talk about taking your whole operation overseas, I trust the more experienced head coach. I trust the more experienced quarterback. I trust the more battle-tested team. So just give me the Chiefs -1.5 will be my favorite play this week.
Yeah, I like that. Mine is the Browns for the week. So, all right, AJ, great stuff as always, brother. I will reach out to you this week. Lawyer Dave wants to say hello.
What's up, Dave?
Hey, AJ, good to see you, buddy.
You too, my man.
We'll catch up.
All right, brother.
Yeah, I'll get you guys each other's information, but yeah, I'm gonna reach out this week. I want to talk to you about a couple things. But hey, thank you so much. Great stuff as always, and let's win some money this weekend.
Let's get it, baby. Talk to you next week, Freddie.
Okay.
Later.
All right, so we're gonna wrap the show up with the guy you just saw. Why are we wearing close to the same color? This is kind of fucked up. It is.
Well, this is what you told me this morning when you left.
Ow.
You are still
That's also what I said.
You are still a solid 4, brother.
Hard 4, not solid 4. Yeah.
Keep that straight.
Yeah. All right, so what bets are you looking at this weekend before we get to talking about the law?
I am going to take Michigan minus half the world. No, I think because they're getting undervalued because they're probably going to get suspended thanks to a little getting caught cheating, allegedly. And I also love the Browns.
Yeah, the Browns are my favorite play this week. So anyway, all right, so let's tell the people about Lawyer Dave.
Okay.
I mean, I think they know, most of them.
Oh, and while we're at it, because we had a little bit of fun with this last week, the next couple of minutes, if any of you have any kind of legal questions, shoot them our way. And one of the deals that Fred and I have talked about for years is that we practice a certain type of law. We're personal injury lawyers. We represent people that get hurt. Any kind of an accident, anywhere in the world, really. In fact, I've got a case going now against the country of Vietnam, but that's another story for another day. At any rate, if you send me a question and it's an area of law that I don't do, then I'll find a lawyer because I've got connections all over town to send you to.
And if he does take your case, you don't pay a dime until you win.
And in addition, we can get you the medical care you need without any money up front.
Look at his neck.
Look at that neck.
I'm telling you.
He's getting the medical care he needs without any money up front, aren't you?
I am.
Indeed, he is.
And the cool thing is, in this case, I was talking about it earlier in the show. Like when I went in for my treatment yesterday, this sounds like little stuff, but you know, they've got the setup where you lie down and they do the work on you, and they've had to help me on the table basically. When I got there yesterday, I just like threw my leg over the table and straddled it and just laid down. I'm like, oh, holy shit!
All right, that's cool stuff.
Yeah, and I felt so great. And when I stood up yesterday, and when I got off the table, I felt like I was 6'3" again. And I'm like, I'm looking at our buddy, and I'm like, wow, you're a tiny.
Well, Dr. Mike is a tiny guy, but he's a great chiropractor.
Fantastic, man.
In fact, I highly recommend those of you that have issues that a chiropractor can help you with, go see my buddy, Dr. Mike. Fred knows how to find him.
Houston Neck and Spine. And again, just email me. I'll send you all the info. You know, I got to tell you, it's been amazing. And like the first couple times I was like, yeah, and I was still in bad shape we talked about when I went to the UH game, and I was really hoping to hang out and go to the tailgate. And, you know, my friend Lynn was there, and I was, you know, wanting to take her around and introduce her to everybody. And
what does she think you are?
a 4. Yeah. She agrees.
But you know
No,
what?
no,
Fred?
but you know what? She did tell me if I improved my lighting when I did Fox 26 the other day, I might be a 5. So, yeah.
Well, I mean, the fact that you're now standing up closer to your full 6'3", and you've lost a heck of a lot of weight, I think that the odds are good that you're going to find a wife number 5.
I'm working on it. You know, there'll be one out there.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Awesome.
but no, but I felt bad because I had to go home and because I couldn't walk around. It was brutal, and so the next Monday I went in and I was feeling horrible.
Yep.
And I even told the doctor, I was like, I feel so bad. And he was great, but that next Wednesday, that was the first day that I saw like real progress. And I got up off that table and I'm like, I even told him, and I told him, I feel remarkable.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And then this week has been great. Monday was good. Wednesday was better. You know, Monday for some reason on Mondays I'm so sore afterwards because we do all these hard exercises and stuff.
Oh yeah.
But
Are
man,
you doing the ones at home you're supposed to?
yeah, oh yeah. I've been doing that, and because it's easy, because like some of them are just like, you know, grab a bandana and do this, you know. So I'll do that in the bar.
Good enough.
And so most of the exercises are easy, but the difference is it's not just the neck, because that affects everything, right? It affects your spine, it affects your arm strength,
yeah.
it affects your legs. Yeah, I mean, I still have numbness in my fingers, but it affects everything. And man, once I started turning a corner, it was like, holy bleep, this is badass.
We're not supposed to use bad words?
Oh, I can use bad words. It's my podcast. What the fuck?
Holy bleep. Then,
Actually, it's
buddy.
our podcast. But yeah.
Holy bleep. Listen, guys, I'm available if you need a helping hand in a legal way. I'm there for you. You can count on me.
713-626-8900.
That's my number.
And I all the time people are hitting me up on Twitter DMs. Hey, what's Lawyer Dave's number? That's the number. You can always do that. You can email me. You can reach out to me anyway, and I will get you Lawyer Dave's number.
You guys ready for the final?
Yeah.
You got to help us out.
You guys got to jump in here.
Whenever, go ahead, Fred. Give it up the prelim.
No. If you need a lawyer, what are you going to do?
You better dial Dave.
All right, guys. Thanks so much for joining the show today. Great show. AJ is always great. Lawyer Dave's always great.
Fred's always great.
Well, I'm okay. I'm
He's
a 4.
a solid 10 on the air.
No, I'm a hard 4.
That's solid 4.
But I'll be back on Monday, and haven't decided who's co-hosting yet, but I'll decide that tomorrow. But it'll be fun, and hope to have Eva back to do some comedy for you on Monday. And you know, Hot Tracy will be here to do LSU. So it'll be a fun show, and we will do that then. All right, guys. Really appreciate you guys, and love you guys for tuning in. And until Monday, stay sportsy, Gulf Coast badasses.